Time to know the news of the week. I'm Pam Rances. This is the MB Rundown. A few days before Christmas, justice is served to the victims of Maguindanao massacre, which was dubbed as the single deadliest event for journalists in recent history. The details about this historic verdict and trial for more than 10 years in this report.
The prosecution having established the guilt beyond reasonable doubt of the following accused who are found to have acted as principal, namely Datu Zaldi Ampatuan, Datu Anwar Ampatuan Sr.
Yes.
They are hereby convicted and sentenced to suffer the penalty of imprisonment of reclusion perpetua without paroles pursuant to RA 9346.
It was a victory for the victims of the infamous Maguindanao massacre, the deadliest election-related violence and attack against journalists ever recorded in history. This is the principal accused in the mass murder have already been convicted. 28 persons, including the 3 sons of late former Maguindanao Governor Andal Ampatuan Sr., were found guilty in the death of 57 persons in November 23, 2009 massacre. The families of the victims welcomed Judge Jocelyn Solis Reyes' decision. But for them, the acquittal of some of the accused, including 2 from the Ampatuan clan and 55 policemen who had their roles in the mass murder, still haunt their lives. To note, there are still 80 accused who remain at large up until now. Meanwhile, the much-anticipated promulgation of the decision draw much attention. From social media users to various groups and even lawmakers, all rejoice to the court's verdict. But for the National Union of Journalists of the Philippines, it was just a partial victory. Apart from the acquittal of some of the accused, the case of photojournalist Reynaldo Momay, who was believed to be the 58th victim of the Ampatuan massacre, still remains unsolved.
Some workers and shoppers in a mall in Davao region were pinned to death after a 6.9 magnitude quake hit Davao region on Sunday. The National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, or NDRRMC, reported that the destructive quake already claimed the lives of 9 people. 3 of them were victims who were trapped inside the collapsed Southern Trade Shopping Center in Padada, Davao del Sur, where search and rescue operations have already been terminated since Tuesday. This, as the rescuers said that there were no longer signs of life. Other fatalities came from adjacent towns affected by the strong quake. Meanwhile, more than 100 individuals were also injured. 99 were coming from regions 11 and 12. The disaster also damaged around 315 structures in Davao del Sur. The relief operations are ongoing, but the quake-hit victims are still appealing for help, such as bottled water, food, beddings, and tarpaulins as makeshift evacuation tents. Vice President Leni Robredo deferred to publicize the report on the government's drug war to allow the country to prioritize the rescue and relief operations in the areas affected by the 6.9 magnitude earthquake. On Monday, Robredo showed to the media a copy of her recent drug war report after sitting as a co-chair of the Interagency Committee on Anti-Illegal Drugs, or ICAD, for 19 days. But she deferred the release anew and instead appealed for help for the quake victims in Mindanao. In fact, the Office of the Vice President already formed a team to conduct relief operations to the affected areas in the region. But presidential spokesperson Salvador Panelo criticized her for delaying the release, citing that the VP only wants the spotlight. But Robredo's camp insisted that the welfare of the quake victims should come first than the release of the report. Meanwhile, the Philippine National Police expressed confidence on Robredo's report, citing that it does not fear any revelation from the VP. The devotional 9-day series of masses this Christmas season, or known to many as Simbang Gabi, has kicked off this week. And the first day of Misa de Gallo in St. Peter's Basilica on December 15 became historic as the Mass was presided over by Pope Francis to honor Filipinos. This report. In the history of the traditional 9-day Filipino masses or Simbang Gabi, Pope Francis himself marked another narrative as he was the first ever pope to preside over the Holy Mass this Christmas season in St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City. The Pope celebrated the Mass to honor overseas Filipino workers or OFWs in Rome. In fact, in his homily, said Filipinos who went to foreign lands have a special mission. This, as they endured long years being away from their families to search for a better future. The Pope also told thousands of Filipinos who attended the Mass at the Vatican to be smugglers of faith and thanked them for their devotion. The Mass was also celebrated with hymns from a large Filipino choir whose members are wearing the traditional Filipino garments like Filipiniana. Songs and readings were in Filipino, English, and Italian. Just in Italy, more than 100,000 Filipinos work temporary as workers or are now living as temporary residents. Meanwhile, Pope Francis' first pastoral visit in the country was in 2015. He also presided in a mass in typhoon-hit Tacloban City in eastern Samar. U.S. President Donald Trump has been impeached. To date, he is the third president of the United States of America to be impeached. More in this report.
After the grueling hours of partisan debate in the merits of the two impeachment charges, U.S. President Donald Trump has become the third president of the United States to be impeached by the House of Representatives. The House, led by Speaker Nancy Pelosi, voted on two charges: that Trump had abused his power and that he had obstructed Congress. Garnering 230 votes versus 197, Trump was found guilty in abusing his power on his alleged attempt to pressure Ukraine to announce investigations into his political rival, Joe Biden, who is also running for the 2020 presidential elections. The second charge, obstruction of Congress, due to his failure to cooperate in the impeachment inquiry, also garnered the majority of votes and concluded with 229 to 198 votes. This means the trial in the U.S. Senate will determine whether or not America's head of state will remain in his office in the weeks to follow.
Meanwhile, these are the other top news of the week.
The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, BSP, launched the new 20-piso coin as well as the new design of the 5-piso coin. The two-tone 20-piso coin still has the major elements of its banknote version, such as the features of former President Manuel L. Quezon, while the new 5-piso coin has an enhanced shape with 9 sides. The BSP clarified that both the 20-piso coin and its banknote version will coexist until the banknote supply expires in 2021. State Weather Bureau Pag-asa reported that a potential storm is brewing outside the country may hit parts of the quake-hit Mindanao this Christmas. Pag-asa is also monitoring another low-pressure area near the region. The Bureau advised those who live in the areas affected by the through of the LPA to take precautionary measures on possible flash flood. Around 131 congressmen from the House of Representatives signed a resolution backing the potential resumption of peace talks between the government and the Communist Party of the Philippines, National Democratic Front of the Philippines, or CPP, NDFP. The House bill was number 636, was filed by Bayan Muna Party List Representative Carlos Zarate, which aims to support the resumption of peace talks. Earlier, President Rodrigo Duterte pushed for its revival, and he announced that he had sent Labor Secretary Silvestre Rebello III to the Netherlands to discuss the matter with NDFP consultant Jose Maria Sison.
Let's take a quick recap of the MB Rundown for today, December 20, 2019. Justice is served to the victims of the Maguindanao massacre as the Ampatuan brothers and other principal accused were found guilty. A 6.9 magnitude earthquake hit Davao region on Sunday. More than 100 individuals were injured and 9 were reported dead. Vice President Leni Robredo deferred to publicize the report on the government's truck war to prioritize the rescue operations in the areas affected by the 6.9 magnitude earthquake. Misa de Gallo or Simbang Gabi in St. Peter's Basilica became historic as the Mass was presided by Pope Francis to honor Filipinos. And the United States House of Representatives has voted to impeach U.S. President Donald Trump. And that's the MB Rundown. I'm Pam Rances.